Can you get on YouTube?
Can I get on YouTube right now?
Yeah. Search for CHS walkout. Something like that. Or not CHS walkout, geez, gun control rally. Carlisle, something like that.
Would it be on your channel?
Yeah. If you have the link to my
channel.
Okay, yeah. I'm just gonna put it as close up here as I can.
I don't see anything on your channel.
Really?
It doesn't have certain.
It just says your... Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right.
Oh, what they do?
They're across the street talking.
Probably just like...
But you know, the guys I spent you on Shane's pastor.
Hi.
So glad to see you.
Hi. How are you?
Not yet.
It's getting warmer.
Yeah, the sun's
Yeah, someone asked me if I was cold. I was like, alright.
Oh, maybe a little bit.
It's getting better.
Michael and Aiden are currently walking. They're right over there.
Hey, there's.
I'm surprised to not see many Carlisle students. That's good. Also, why is CV having their rally? Is there somewhere in Mechanicsburg that would be much closer?
I don't know.
Actually, they Twittered it whenever they do
I think a lot of schools are playing on
Yeah. So, like, I got, like, the first meeting, which is, I felt that whole thing, so I just with both so,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
Send them a little clip of what's going on.
yeah. Yeah, I just thought I'd say hello in person.
Nice to meet you. I'm Toby, by the way.
I'm Derek. Nice to meet you.
Derek?
Okay, figure it out. Help me out.
Yeah.
Are you live streaming?
Yes.
Can you text me a link? Or send you, or you can
Do you
just
have
like,
my number?
Can you go to my YouTube channel?
Yeah,
Because I can't.
and then can you text the link in the walkout?
Oh, yeah.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna get started in a minute here. Just as a logistics thing, the Veterans Memorial Courtyard over here, we were asked to stay out of that area, so just keep that in mind while we're up here. We'll get started in a minute.
Oh, wait, no.
Perfect.
Hey, what's up?
Is this loud enough? Can people down there hear me? Down on the end? Can you hear me? All right. I got a yes from the back. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the rally. Welcome to the rally. Okay, that's a good start. Rachel Scott, 17 years old. Daniel Rorbo, 15 years old. Kyle Velasquez, 16 years old. Stephen Curnow, 14 years old. Cassie Bernal, 17. Isaiah Scholes, 18. Matthew Hector, 16. Lauren Townsend, 18. John Tomlin, 16. Kelly Fleming, 16. Daniel Mouser, 15. Corey DePuter, 17. Ross Almadine, 20. Brian Bloom, 25. Ryan Clark, 22. Austin Cloyd, 18. Daniel Perez Cueva, 21. Matthew Waltney, 24. Caitlin Hammeran, 19. Jeremy Herbstritt, 27. Rachel Hill, 18. Emily Hilscher, 19. Matthew Laporte, 20. Jarrett Lane, 22. Henry Lee, 20. Lauren McCain, 20. Daniel O'Neill, 22. Aaron Peterson, 18. Michael Pohl Jr., 23. Julia Pride, 23. Mary Karen Reed, 19. Rima Samaha, 18. Leslie Sherman, 20. Maxine Turner, 22. Nicole White, 20. Charlotte Bacon, 6. Daniel Barden, 7. Olivia Engels, 6. Josephine Gay, 7. Dylan Hockley, 6. Madison Sue, 6. Catherine Hubbard, 6. Chase Kowalski, 7. Jesse Lewis, 6. Anna Marquez Green, 7. James Mattioli, 6. Grace McDonald, 7. Emily Parker, 6. Jack Pinto, 6. Noah Posner, 6. Caroline Praviti, 6. Jessica Rakos, 6. Avia Richmond, 6. Benjamin Wheeler, 6. Allison Wyatt, 6. And most recently, Alyssa Alhadef, 14. Martin Duke, 14. Nicholas Dvoret, 17. James Gutenberg, 14. Luke Hoyer, 15. Carol Lofgren, 14. Gina Montalto, 14. Joaquin Oliver, 17. Elena Petty, 14. Meadow Pollock, 18. Helena Ramsey, 17. Alex Shaster, 14. Carmen Shetrup, 16. Peter Wang, 15. These are just a few of the victims from 4 of the deadliest school shootings in recent history. It's become pretty predictable now. There's a shooting, then there's media coverage, then there are thoughts and prayers. People say the thoughts and prayers aren't enough, and then the other people will say, don't politicize this, these are victims, now's not the time, and the conversation ends. Then the incident repeats. It's kind of like we already know what's going to happen, so we just go through the motions every time. But this time, something feels different. This time, the students are done waiting for the adults to get stuff done. This time, we are saying enough. The friends and families of the victims of the Parkland shooting are speaking up. Tommy Lauren, a conservative political commentator, tweeted, "Can the left let the families grieve for even 24 hours before they push their anti-gun and anti-gun owner agenda? It's not about a gun, it's about another lunatic." One student spoke up replying, "A gun has killed 17 of my fellow classmates. A gun has traumatized my friends. My entire school traumatized from this tragedy. This could have been prevented." Another said, "I was hiding in the closet for 2 hours. It was about guns. You weren't there. You don't know how it felt." This time we're going to get something done. Gun control needs to happen now. We've reached a point in our nation where, in spite of hundreds of innocent lives taken per year, and in spite of facts that say that gun control works, we still have a lot of adults in this country who prioritize hunting and target practice over the lives of children. Many adults have become complacent because they've become so used to saying, it is what it is, and we can't change a thing. They say that gun control in such a gun-loving country is impossible and it's not worth implementing. But for some reason, the kids aren't saying that. Maybe it's that we're still young and the adrenaline and hormones are out of control. Maybe it's because we haven't been beaten down by the real world over the course of 30, 40, 50 years. Whatever the reason is, it makes us do some crazy things. It makes us do really irrational things a lot of the time. Like, you have probably seen a teenager stay up all night to finish an assignment they just started that they've had a month to work on, right? I've done it, everyone's done it. It's this absurd sense of optimism that drives us to do ridiculous things. But that optimism in the face of overwhelming odds, isn't that the American spirit? Isn't that what drove us to declare independence from a country that had a military that seemed like it could end all of us in a second? Isn't that what brought us from 13 colonies with endless disagreements to one nation with one constitution? It's the same reason we believe that in the face of overwhelming odds, we can pass gun control and we can end the mass shootings. Emma Gonzalez is a senior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and she delivered an incredibly powerful speech in response to the shooting. Her speech concluded with this: companies trying to make caricatures of the teenagers these days, saying that we're all self-involved and trend-obsessed. They hush us into submission when our message doesn't reach the ears of the nation. We are prepared to call BS. Politicians who sit in their gilded House and Senate seats, funded by the NRA, telling us nothing could have been done to prevent this, we call BS. They say tougher gun laws do not decrease gun violence, and we call BS. They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun, and we call BS. They say guns are just tools like knives and are as dangerous as cars. We call BS. They say no laws could have prevented the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred, and we call BS. That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS. And you know what? Right now we're kids. Yeah, we're too young to vote. But we're sitting back and we're watching as our lawmakers fail us every day. Some of us are going to be able to vote in this upcoming election. But not all of us. We're not all going to be able to vote in this upcoming election, which is why we need help from adults who want to work with us to use their votes against anybody who stands in the path of gun control. We, the students, call on you, the adults, to help us make something happen. Don't let us down this May during primaries or this November during the midterm elections. Do not let us down. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Josetta Checkett, and I am a freshman at Carlisle High School. I grew up knowing that my free, high-quality education is a privilege. In fact, that is the very thing that continues to motivate me through any hardships I may have, knowing that there are so many students out there that do not get the same opportunities as me in the future that I have before me. But this very thing that has been my shining beacon to guide me into adulthood may be the reason I do not make it that far. I, my classmates, and kids across the country may not make it to that future we've been preparing for, just like hundreds of kids before us. For me, school has always been a place that, even if boring at times, was safe. I've been an anxious person my whole life, and contrary to how media often portrays school settings, that anxiety was assuaged when I was there. School is routine. It was the same cycle of comforting repetition day after day, and it was a place to be with people and learn in an environment that it seemed nothing bad could ever happen in. And I did not understand why people did not see things the same way I did. And then, as elementary school wore on, I understood more about this phenomenon that is the school shooting. It came in waves, each new occurrence, slowly, carefully rocking the constructed shelter I had made school into. I slowly learned what they were, why they happened, but they were still a faraway danger that happened in places like Sandy Hook. They didn't happen here. It was not a problem for me to worry about yet. But I finished elementary school, and I finished middle school, and I am in my first year of high school, and school has lost that glow that my eyes had wrapped it in, a glow that was probably never there. For I have learned that school is not the safe place I always thought it would be. The strangers that scared me on the news as a fourth grader now wear the faces of my classmates and sit behind me 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, 41 weeks a year for 12 long years. That is 12 years of walking through crowded hallways wondering if I will go home in a school bus or in a coffin. And this is not something I can be okay with. I cannot be okay with the fact that I do not look at the 15-year-old child sitting next to me as a 15-year-old, but as a threat. Because I now know that it is not just a faraway danger. It does not happen in the distant lands of Sandy Hook. It is a very real danger, and it could happen here. I had this very discussion with a classmate of mine a few weeks ago, a boy I know who has multiple guns and takes pride in owning multiple guns. And to quote him, "The Second Amendment to the Constitution gives American citizens the right to bear arms. I'm an American citizen, and if I want to have guns, then that right is mine." What I did not say to him, and looking back, what I wish I had said, is that it is not about those rights anymore. I respect the Second Amendment, but it stopped being about those rights. In fact, it stopped being about those rights the moment Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris shot their first victim at Columbine 18 years ago. It stopped being about those rights when we began huddling inside classrooms with the door locked and the lights off because shootings were such a present danger that our fears were rational. It stopped being about those rights when the price we began paying to maintain them was our lives. Because isn't that what all this is about? Doesn't the right to live trump the right to own a firearm designed to kill multiple human beings? So school can never again be the safe haven I grew up thinking it was. I am grateful for my education, but I am not grateful for what I see happening around me. Children becoming fearful robots, programmed with drills and safety exit strategies. Children losing that little spark inside of them that knows something can be done. There can be a future where we don't cower, we fight. These kids are already victims. We need gun control so school can once again be a place for learning, a place for comfort, and a place where we do not worry about leaving in one piece. We are the first step, but there is so much more to be done. So do not let this movement crescendo here. We must make ourselves heard because we have the power to make something happen, and change must be made because I will not be a statistic. Thank you.
Thanks, Josetta. Next up we have Ellie Park, and she is a mother of two and a very well-respected teacher at Carlisle High School. She's been my teacher twice, and she's great. Here she is.
Hi, is this loud enough? Yeah? Okay, awesome. Hey, I'm going to ask everybody here to do something that teachers ask kids to do a lot. Would every high school student or student at any school raise their hand right now? If you are a student in a public school, would you raise your hand? Hey, grown-ups, would you look around, please? Would you tell them thank you? Thank you. I have never in my life been more proud. Oh yeah. I have never in my life been more proud of teenagers than I have been in the last 3 months. And I have been proud of teenagers my whole life. I have to say something at the beginning here. I am compelled first to ensure that everyone here understands that while I work for Carlisle Area School District, my statement today is in no way endorsed by or reflective of the views of the district administration or anyone for whom I work. I am not standing here as a representative of Carlisle Area School District in any way. My position holds no bearing on how I run my classroom or engage with my students, and that is true. I speak here as a community member, but not in my capacity as a public educator. For 7 years, I have worked in room 111 of the Swartz building at the high school. For 7 years, I have taught literature and facilitated learning in that room. And that room has been a constant for me, a warm space with shelves full of books and comfortable chairs and uplifting posters and happy teenagers most of the time. As my students and my lesson plans change and shift each year, as society morphs, my classroom holds steady. But this year, my classroom has changed. I am still settled comfortably in 111, but with some new additions. This year, I spent $15.91 at Home Depot on bungee cords to secure my classroom door from an intruder, and on a hammer to break a window in my classroom so that my students could escape. I spent 57 minutes drafting a plan for who in each class should break that window, how they could safely exit from the second-story classroom to the ground below, and what those who weren't actively escaping should do while students forced their way out the window. I spent $11.17 at Target on magnetic baskets from my whiteboard, where I place my room keys and my ID badge each day should a student need to be the one to lock the door, while I am helping other students out of the window. Every class knows where I keep my keys and what to do with them in such a scenario. In October, I had a dream in which, moved, I clutched the doorknob of my classroom while an armed teenager on the other side shouted profanities, watching students never fast enough trying to get out of my window. I was just buying them time. Buying them time. It seems like hyperbole, this response. It feels irrational, overwrought to be imagining myself and my students in such a horrible situation, to be taking measures daily against such an eventuality, to be drawing on about it. But we've all seen the footage, haven't we? We all know the numbers, right? 9 shootings in 9 weeks. 9 shootings in schools where someone other than the shooter was killed. 17 dead at Stoneman Douglas, 20 dead in Sandy Hook, 15 dead at Columbine. On the inside of those classroom doors, standing in front of teenagers whom I love, the horrible possibility is all too real. In Parkland, teachers enacted those plans that they had only imagined. In case of the unimaginable, but 14 children and 3 adults still died. In Perry Hall, Maryland, where I went to high school, a guidance counselor launched himself onto the body of a screaming 16-year-old with a loaded rifle as he sent bullets through the air of the cafeteria. At Sandy Hook Elementary, teachers filled cabinets intended for Elmer's glue and stickers with 6-year-olds trembling and silent. Do you know how hard it is to get a 6-year-old to be silent? But it wasn't hyperbole, not for those children. It was real. It wasn't unimaginable. It was happening. And it happens over and over and over again. My 9th grade class reads a book called The Giver. One of the lessons from that novel is that sometimes not deciding is deciding. We talk about how that works, how not deciding can be a way of deciding. We talk about how moms in the room, all the way that they do choose not to decide and inherently decide, right? When they don't decide to clean their bedrooms, they're actually deciding not to clean their bedrooms. They're deciding to ignore their mom's pleas and the big mess and all of the sensible house rules. They've actually decided not to take care of that important business, haven't they? And by not deciding, they get to maintain comfortable, comforting self-delusions. It's not that they said no to such a reasonable request. They're not unreasonable or uncaring or selfish or indifferent. They just never got around to deciding to act. In The Giver, people are being murdered in secret to maintain the illusion of peace and harmony in their fictional community. The protagonist at one crucial point comes to acknowledge that by doing nothing to stop this, he is complicit in those deaths. Ninth graders really get this. They are just becoming painfully aware of what hypocrisy means. At what point are we complicit in the deaths of children, teenagers, students murdered in our schools? At what point are we responsible for 6-year-olds crouched in a cabinet too afraid to cry? At what point is it on us? I love my job. I love my students even more. And I was a little afraid to speak out today, sort of announcing myself to the world like this. But at some point, inaction becomes action. I don't ever want to have to use the bungee cords wrapped around my door or the hammer in the cabinet by my window. I don't want any of my students to ever have to fumble with my keys as their sweaty fingers try to lock a door with the unimaginable on the other side. I don't even want to think for a moment about any of this. It's easy to think of it as something that just happens in other schools, other places, something that will never, could never happen here. To blame anything, to lay fault anywhere, to make it impossible in my mind that my own 2 toddlers might grow up motherless because of a person with a gun in my school. But until we take action, and the country takes action, the possibility that an armed intruder might come through my door to shoot me, to shoot the teenagers I love so much, is on me. It's on every one of us now. And to pretend otherwise is simply dangerous. So it's time to decide to decide. And it's time to take action. So today, I hope everyone standing in front of me decides to decide. I hope everyone in front of me, standing in front of me, walks over to that stand, manned by my students, and registers to vote. I hope every single one of you, except those of you who are minors, in this audience votes in May and in November and in every election after that. You are the constituents. Your voice is your weapon. Use it. Yes! Today, I hope everyone standing in front of me pledges to hold politicians accountable for their votes. To tell them that our lives and our children's lives are more valuable than NRA dollars. Today, I hope everyone standing in front of me carefully and seriously considers and reconsiders their position on the place of firearms in our country. Our Second Amendment is real and valid, and I am not standing here asking to abolish it. I am not standing here hoping to invade anyone's homes, to confiscate guns used wisely and carefully for defensible purposes by good people. But I have been working in a school for 7 years, and every year it gets a little more likely that I will be shot there. That's not the kind of protection the Second Amendment seeks. Let me be clear, and maybe I should have teachers in the audience raise their hands too. Let me be clear. I would not have Congress arm us, right? putting a gun in my hands is not the solution. Trust me. I would have Congress expand background checks and implement psychological evaluations as a mandate for gun ownership. I would have Congress enact stricter age restrictions for firearm purchases. I would have Congress place limitations on magazine sizes. I would have Congress ban bump stocks. There we go, guys. And I would have Congress ban assault-style weapons like the one purchased legally by Nicholas Cruz to murder 14 children and their teachers, coaches, and administrators, send 14 more to the hospital with bullets in their bodies, and traumatize hundreds more, having borne witness to that horror. I would have Congress decide finally to do something to prevent these tragedies. Because if they do not, and if we do not, next time, and without action, there will be a next time. The blood is on our hands. Thank you. But really, these teenagers, guys, clap for them.
Isn't she cool? Yeah, I'm going to be announcing my run in the 2020 presidential election. Next up, Asia Wittenberger is speaking. She's a senior at Boiling Springs High School who organized the Social Issues Club.
Hello. Thank you for coming to this rally in the wake of yet another mass shooting tragedy. He mentioned this already, but I would like to say, yes, I do go to Boiling Springs instead of Carlisle, yet nonetheless, I'm excited to be speaking today alongside Carlisle students I've met before and those who I'm meeting for the first time in my life. It is hard to figure out why anyone would shoot another person, even worse when it is multiple people all at once. What happened in Florida was done by a 19-year-old man. Yes, a man. Not a kid like how many media outlets and conversations we have been sounding. He was old enough to know exactly what he did when he pulled the trigger, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others at Stoneman Douglas High School. It was a terrible, horrible decision on his part, and we often wonder what leads people to act this way. So the question is, why is it every single time a mass shooting occurs, especially by a white man? Because we know if this was a Muslim person or a black male, that these words would be different. Why is it that we use the words mental illness and mental health every single time this happens? He knew what he was doing. Nicholas Cruz knew what he was doing. It was premeditated. He is now pleading guilty. And when he saw his guardians for the first time after he killed all these people, he said sorry. He knew. Most mass shooters are fully mentally aware of what they are doing in that moment and have had these attacks planned way ahead of time. Something surprising for some to hear is that most mass shooters do not have a mental illness, or at the very least, were never diagnosed. To claim every single time a mass shooting occurs that the perpetrator had a mental illness is dangerous, and it stigmatizes the millions of Americans with mental illnesses. According to Jeffrey Swanson, representing the National Institute of Health, if all mental illnesses were to disappear, they would only go down by about 4%. That shows that mental illness is not the issue with these tragedies. Those with mental illnesses are actually far more likely to fall victim to gun violence by able-minded people than the opposite, and vice versa. And why are those words only heard with mass shootings? Why not with other violent crimes like domestic abuse or sexual assault? Mental illness is not a scapegoat to essentially forgive someone of their horrible actions. Hold these mass shooters accountable for their actions. I'm tired of living in an era where kids around my age, a little bit older and younger than I, are afraid of how my day at school will go. To the Stoneman Douglas High School victims, your lives being cut too short could have been prevented with sensible, common sense gun control. Please call your representatives and your senators and let your thoughts on events like this and other events be heard. Register to vote. If you will be 18 by Election Day this year, register to vote. We're young, but that doesn't mean that we don't know what we're talking about. We're educated beyond belief, and more than generations before us. We're awake and we're aware, and we're the future of this world. And student lives should matter more than this country's guns. Thank you.
She's cool too. A well-respected community member who some of you might have heard of is speaking up next. His name is Alan Howe. Please give him a warm welcome.
I've got to tell you, I don't want to speak after these kids, and I don't want to speak on this topic. Before I start my prepared remarks, I want to ask you to consider something. I want you to recall the images you saw after the 9/11 attack. I want you to remember how that galvanized the nation and gave us a unity of purpose in dealing with the threat that we faced. And I want you to compare that to the images that we see after these mass shootings. Sterile images of schools, of churches. Now I know that seeing images like that, rather than seeing, for example, a blood-stained altar or a classroom door riddled with bullet holes, protects your mental state, your emotions from harm. But I also know that they protect the NRA. So consider, maybe we should see just a little bit more. The NRA has made it perfectly clear. You are either with the NRA or you are with the kids of Parkland. The NRA will not let you be with both. For years, I pleaded with my gun-owning friends to support reasonable actions like universal background checks. I warned them that if we did nothing to reduce the number of mass shootings, we would reach a tipping point where those who do not own guns would swamp gun owners. I told them that just as I helped professionalize the U.S. Air Force by removing people who do not belong there, we need to professionalize the gun-owning community by excluding those who should never touch a gun. Many of my gun-owning friends flatly refuse to consider any actions, no matter how reasonable. So, many mass shootings later, we are at that tipping point. I have zero sympathy with gun owners who refuse to act after past mass shootings. I have zero sympathy with the NRA. I am 100% with the kids of Parkland, and I hope they get everything they are asking for. Members of Congress, your thoughts and prayers are meaningless. Your sympathy for the victims of the Parkland massacre is meaningless. Any action you take that does not directly reduce the danger of more mass shootings is meaningless. We think your failure to act is heartless and cruel, and we pray that you are removed from office. It bears repeating that groups like Moms Demand Action and Every Town for Gun Safety and the kids from Parkland and from schools around the nation, including schools right here, did not organize because they are upset that people hunt. They did not organize because they are upset that people are poking holes in paper with bullets. They did not organize to destroy the Second Amendment or to take away everyone's guns. They organized because they are sick and tired of idiots with guns shooting our children. I am sick and tired of idiots with guns shooting our children, and I need you to be sick and tired of idiots with guns shooting our children. And I need you to act. Everyone must act. Congress must act.
Up next, we have Colin Willard, who's a senior at Carlisle High School, and he's been helping to plan both this rally and the walkout that's happening in a few days.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Before I get started, I just wanted to take a moment and thank all of you for coming out here today. It's so great to see so many different faces, so many different ages, so many different races. It's so awesome to see all of you out here today. So give yourselves a hand, really. As Americans, we've seen an unprecedented and unparalleled amount of gun violence strike our country. We've been forced to live with the fear of being the next victim in one of the hundreds of mass shootings that occur each year in this country. But that's just it. We would just be the next victim, the next chain of events, the next death. Part of a statistic on every national news station over the next 48 hours, and included in the thoughts and prayers of millions across the country, and then only to disappear into oblivion. Quite honestly, I am absolutely tired of thinking like this. I'm tired of seeing the news reports, the tweets, the op-ed articles. Gun violence is an epidemic in this country, and change is not just needed at this point, it is vital. Britain experienced mass shootings in 1987 that resulted in 17 dead, and again in 1996 that resulted in 18 deaths. As a result, they changed their policy to restrict access to high-caliber weapons, then banned guns altogether. Germany experienced 2 mass shootings as well, 16 dead in 2002 and again in 2009 when 15 died. They changed their policies, limiting access to guns and mandating how guns are stored. Australia experienced a mass shooting that resulted in the death of 35 in 1996. They overhauled their policies, restricting semi-automatic weapon access and instituting a buyback program. These countries saw something terrible occur and they made a change. Now, is their solution perfect? Will it prevent every future homicide? Of course not. But the point is, they saw an issue and they addressed it. And I cannot say the same for the U.S. When Americans were attacked at Pearl Harbor, we did something. When Americans were taken hostage in Iran, we did something. When terrorists took over a plane and flew it into the World Trade Center, we did something. Our reactions to these situations were by no means perfect, but our legislators and our government officials saw the issue and they took action. I cannot say the same for mass shootings. When 32 people are killed on a college campus, you do something to make sure it doesn't happen again. When 27 elementary school students and teachers are killed at their school, you do something to make sure it doesn't happen again. When 49 people are shot and killed in a nightclub, you do something to make sure it doesn't happen again. When 58 are shot and killed at a concert, you do something to make sure it doesn't happen again. When 25 people are shot and killed during a church service, you do something to make sure it doesn't happen again. And when 17 high school students and faculty are shot and killed, you do something to make sure it happens again. Thoughts and prayers won't stop future mass shootings. They haven't stopped them in the past, and they won't stop them in the future. The inaction that we've seen from our legislators is unacceptable, and I will tolerate it no longer. Enough is enough! We live in a democratic nation where the people have the power. That power lies in the right to vote and the right to express our beliefs. If you see the injustice that is striking our country, and if you see the inaction from our elected officials, and you believe that this is damaging to the future of our country, then use your voice, be loud, and be passionate. Students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas have used their voices. They've held a nationally televised town hall with U.S. senators. They've gone to Tallahassee to lobby to their state government, and they've accrued hundreds of thousands of retweets, spreading their word across the nation. They've set the precedent for the rest of us to follow. So let's make sure this inaction doesn't happen again. To Senator Pat Toomey, I hope you hear the voices of the citizens of Carlisle and the many others across our great state. I want you to know that we are tired of the inaction orchestrated by you and your peers. I hope you listen to your constituents. We want action. We want you to make it happen. To Senator Bob Casey, Mr. Casey, you've taken action to prevent terrorists from buying guns. We want more. Be vocal, be a leader in your field. Your constituents think that the frequency of mass shootings is a pressing issue for the future of our country. Listen to us and take action. And to Carlisle's new representative, Congressman Scott Perry. Mr. Perry, you're up for re-election this year. You don't represent a district in which your victory is guaranteed anymore. Your opponents, hear your voices. Alan Howe just spoke before me. He understands our concerns, realizes the inaction that isn't acceptable. And if you ignore us, we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that you will not be our representative in a few months. Inaction is not a solution. We cannot continue on this path. I've been raised in a society in which mass shootings have become normalized, and I don't want the same for my future children. Enough is enough. If you agree with myself and my fellow speakers, I urge you to hit the polls later this year and hit them hard. Yes. Cast your vote for candidates who refuse to tolerate inaction. We have a voice, we are strong, and we can change this country. It's time to get to work. Thank you.
I'm sure many of you know our next speaker. His name is Councilman Sean Crampsey.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me across the street? All right, awesome. That's a tough act to follow, but I wanted to start by thanking Michael and all of the students who have invited me to speak today. All of your hard work and your movement, it's been an honor to watch. So I think we should give them a round of applause for the work that they're doing. I wanted to start out this speech with a little bit of a poll. So can you give me a cheer if you're a paid actor here today at this rally? Okay, no one. Can you give me a cheer if you're a student? Okay, that makes sense. And you may think that was a silly poll question, but there are politicians in Harrisburg and D.C. that are seeking to silence and belittle your movement. So these politicians, they'll say, oh, you're just students, or you're young people. You're fighting back, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. So I'm so proud to see you folks fight back. And that's why what you're doing here today, and what you continue to do, is so important. You're here because enough is enough. You never want to see what happened in Parkland happen anywhere else in our country. To be clear, the mass shooting discussion is not about Democrat versus Republican. It's not even about the Second Amendment. This is a discussion around safety and our future generations. And to the young people here, this is your discussion. For those that don't want to see change happen, you force them to have this discussion. I'm saddened to stand here today as a millennial, and some of our other folks in this crowd, we have failed you. We have failed you when it comes to sensible gun control. The sad reality is school shootings are not new. I sat in a classroom in 1999 when the Columbine shooting occurred, and 15 lives were taken that day. And we hoped and prayed things would change. I remember hearing about the 2015 Red Lake Indian High School shooting of 10 students, and we hoped and we prayed that things would change. I remember right here in Pennsylvania, West Nickel Mines School, 6 students shot and killed, and we hoped and prayed that things would change. On the campus of Virginia Tech, 33 students' lives were taken, 28 students massacred in Newtown, Connecticut, many young students. And after these terrible events, we hoped and we prayed. So since Columbine, there have been 212 school shootings, resulting in 266 deaths. Let that sink in. 266 funerals. 266 brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, grandchildren buried because of school shootings. These are lives and experiences taken way too soon. These were our future leaders who never got a chance. They never had an opportunity to attend a rally like this. They never had an opportunity to do a school walkout. That's why what you're doing is so important. You are their voice. We can't keep hoping and praying things will change. The time for that is over. The time now is for action. And as a locally elected official, I feel helpless. I feel frustrated. The truth is, as locally elected officials, there's not much we can do to keep our community safe. That responsibility currently falls on Harrisburg and DC. That's why we must take the fight to Harrisburg and DC. There's a young man to my left, I think he's still over there, and to your right. He has a sign with phone numbers. Put those phone numbers in your head. Memorize those phone numbers. Those are the folks we need to work on. So during these debates, especially the young folks, I'm going to encourage you to keep an open mind. Have a civil discussion with folks, like the folks across the street, and look for solutions. I personally don't have all the answers. I can tell you one thing that is not the right answer, and that's more guns. You're already hearing the debate locally and nationally. We should be arming teachers. This is a terrible policy idea. And it's not terrible because I don't trust our awesome teachers, our great professors. I think they're more than capable people. It's a terrible policy idea because they shouldn't have to be armed. They don't work in a prison, they work in a school. You'll see support for arming teachers, and many of it comes from our friends across the street, from the NRA. Instead of dealing with gun violence and gun control, they want to add more guns. They want that good guy with the gun. That is not the answer to this problem. The fact is, there's some that like to ignore the truth. And the truth is, semi-automatic weapons are mass-killing machines. By the same arm the teacher logic, we should be arming rock bands that play in Las Vegas. We should be arming clergy in Texas and South Carolina. We should be arming movie theater attendants in Colorado. We should be arming legislators who practice softball in Washington, D.C. The facts are clear. These weapons we see in these mass shootings are meant to do harm. When I read the Second Amendment, I don't see anywhere in there that a person has a right to own an arm whose only purpose is killing. I don't read in the Second Amendment that you should be able to fire over 100 rounds in 1 minute. So today, for the young folks on Facebook and the young folks here, I have a few challenges that I hope you'll accept. First, if you're choosing to walk out on March 14th, I want you to take a moment to reflect as you walk out of your school. Take a moment and think of those students in Parkland who had to run out of their school. Not because they felt like walking out, but because their life was in danger. That is the message you need to send when you walk out. You never want this to happen again. And the second challenge goes with the sign you'll see to my left. I challenge you to call your congressman, which right now is Lou Barletta. In the future, will be someone else. Call your state representative. Call your state senator. I'm going to let folks in on a dirty little secret. There are going to be some politicians that say they're with you. They're for gun control. They're with you on this issue. That's no longer good enough. We need a vote. We need a vote in the Pennsylvania House. We need a vote in Washington, D.C. You need to go on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, use your email. Each day, we need to tell these elected officials, we want a vote and we want it now. Because I'll tell you, these folks that we elect, they're going to try to wait you students out. They're going to wait until June and July and say, oh, hopefully they'll forget about it. Hopefully they'll stop bothering me. Do not stop until you get a vote. And if those same elected officials choose not to listen to you, take your voice right to businesses. We've seen it already. Kroger's, LL Bean, Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods. These businesses are hearing your voice and they're succumbing to your movement. And that's a good thing. So you can tell the legislators, we don't need you, right? Our voice is powerful. We're going to go around you and then we're going to vote you out. And lastly, this challenge has already been put out there, but please register to vote. It doesn't matter what party, it doesn't matter who you vote for, but if you register to vote, you can cancel some of those votes across the street.
Yes,
So I'm gonna leave you with a few final messages. First, don't let the haters deter your movement. You're more than just students. You are a movement. Second, don't let the NRA bully you. The NRA and those 6 people across the street are scared of your movement. What you're doing matters. Your actions matter, and you have the establishment scared. Keep it up. Thank you.
Today we are graced with the presence of Carlisle royalty. Mayor Tim Scott will be speaking next.
Really? Royalty? Really? Okay, all right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Scott, and I approve this message. And also, despite the rumors, I am not a paid actor, so don't even believe that. The February school shooting in Parkland, Florida marked a terrible milestone in our country. It was the deadliest school shooting since Sandy Hook Elementary School, where a gunman massacred 26 people, including 20 children in 2012. Since the beginning of the year, incidents of gun violence in our local communities have claimed multiple lives. Each time, we grieve, we pray for the victims and the families. But sadly, there is always a next time. Prayers and love provide comfort and support. Yes, they do. But they don't end gun violence. That's why we need to act. The victims of Parkland, Florida mass shooting not only need our thoughts and prayers, they deserve action and change. Americans are sick of this charade. How many more people need to lose their lives violently and needlessly before our nation comes to its senses? Republicans have repeatedly refused to come to the table and discuss common sense reforms. Republicans claim they can't talk gun reform because they don't want to politicize tragedies. But, my God, it is disrespectful to these children that so many of our country's lawmakers refuse to take action and change the gun laws that allow these killings to happen in the first place. Months have gone by since the Las Vegas killings, and Republicans have done nothing to advance common sense solutions, including regulating bump stops that allowed the murderer to cause hundreds of casualties in Florida. My friends, as mayor, I understand that responsible gun ownership is a part of the fabric of many American communities. I don't want to change that, but I also realize that current gun laws are not enough to curtail this epidemic of gun violence facing our country. So my message is simple. Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, President Trump, get to work, do your jobs, so no more innocent lives will be lost. Thank you.
Our next speaker's name is Michael Smith. He's a junior at Carlisle High School. Hello, I'm Michael Smith, and I'm a junior at Carlisle High School. Just a couple of logistical things first. There's a voter registration table over there if you haven't noticed. If you're not registered to vote and you are going to be 18 by the time primaries roll around, please register. There is a sign-up sheet there as well for anyone who's interested in helping us with organizing a political action committee as students. There are only 50 slots on the sign-up sheet. If you need more, we got more pieces of paper. But really, it's super great to be able to stand here with so many people who I agree with, and we all support the same cause, right? I could talk for hours and hours and hours about how much I want gun control. I can talk as long as I want about that, and don't get me wrong, it's a really great thing. But I'm really preaching to the choir here. Okay, none of you are going to get your minds changed by anything I say up here today. Most people in the audience are already in support of gun control and already going to vote against anyone who stands in the path of gun control. This time, though, we see conservatives really coming to the table here. They're saying, you know what, okay, we'll work with you, we'll find a compromise. Obviously, it's not everything that we want, but it's really a start. I still see a lot of people, though, who will poke fun at someone who's protective of their guns, and I mean, I still think it's a silly belief, of course. Do I believe that it's a silly belief to be protective of your guns while children are dying? Yes, absolutely. And that's why we need to convince them of the truth rather than shouting at them and telling them that they're wrong. I don't want to be the one to be delivering this message today. I invited a lot of our Republican elected officials to come speak. Stephen Bloom, Lou Barletta, Pat Toomey, none of whom were able to be here today. But really, one of the most important things to consider when we talk to someone is that we need dialogue. Dialogue doesn't mean that you say your belief and then let the other person talk and not listen to them. You have to be open to understanding the point of view of the other. If you want any real change to occur, you have to be open to understanding. But let me make a distinction here. Understanding is not the same as changing your mind, of course. You don't need to change your vote to Republican. You don't need to join the NRA. Just listen. Consider that uncle who's always at Thanksgiving dinner. You know the one I'm talking about. Always talks about how he's tired of the liberal nonsense and blah, blah, blah. You can have a conversation with him instead of shouting at him over some mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. You The only way that you are ever going to win an argument is by not starting one in the first place. That being said, not everyone is your crazy uncle. The vast majority of conservatives are very sensible people. They don't want to kill your children. They just don't believe that guns are the problem. If you shout at them, tell them that kids are dying because of them, no matter how true that may be, they won't want to change. People rarely believe that what they're doing is wrong. They genuinely have good intentions. This gentleman across the street from us, for example, some might see a man who values guns over the lives of children, who cares more about shooting a deer than about safety. What he sees is a constitutional right that he believes is being threatened, and he needs to defend it. Does that make either of us wrong? No, it doesn't. I don't mean we shouldn't enact gun control, because we absolutely should, and we need to. It doesn't mean that we should take all or even any of the suggestions that this man is offering. It just means we should look at him and look at these people across the street with the same dignity and respect we give to everyone else. I know that this sounds really cheesy. But to change society, you have to change the community. To change the community, you must change the individual, and to change the individual, you have to change the heart. Thank you. Our final speaker today is a student at Carlisle High School who has been the key organizer of the walkout movement, and he's helped to plan this rally as well. He's a senior. His name is Aiden Checkett.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Thanks so much for coming out. Thanks, Mike, for organizing this. Thanks, Mayor Scott and Mr. Cramsey and Mr. Howe for coming out. We really appreciate it. Before I give my speech, I just want to say a few things. First of all, if there's a single person in this crowd who's not registered to vote, please go to that table right there. If one person registers, I'm going to consider this a huge success. Secondly, if you're interested in making this into a movement, if you don't want this to stop today or next week or the week after, we have a sign-up sheet over there. We're going to keep this going. We're going to make a movement out of this. This isn't just a today. We're not going to forget, and they're not going to forget us. So write your name, write your phone number, and we're going to get something going. One more point. A lot of people think that students, especially those in Parkland, are doing this for attention. 3 nights ago, I was at a Model UN conference in New York City, and I woke up at 5 a.m. panting, sweating, and screaming. I had a dream that my school was being shot up, that all my friends were dead, and that there was a bullet coming right toward my face. I woke up in a cold sweat. I terrified everyone in the room, and it wasn't even unusual. This is something that we deal with every day, and that's why we're here today. So I'm going to begin by talking today about another topic that many people find difficult: health insurance. Why do we buy insurance? Most young people will pay more into health insurance than they get out of it. If individuals consistently made money by buying insurance, the industry would collapse. However, despite the fact that insurance is mathematically not worth the cost, there is a near universal agreement that it's imperative for young adults to purchase health insurance. Why then do we buy insurance? The answer lies in the sheer horror and potency of what happens when health insurance is actually needed. When true health crises occur, the cost is simply insurmountable. When cancer or heart disease strike, an uninsured patient would be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. We purchase health insurance because the worst case is so horrible and insurmountably tragic that to go without the antidote, pricey as it is simply madness. Gun control works the exact same way. We are frequently reminded that the majority of gun owners are good, safe, sensible people, like our friends across the street. I completely believe, respect, and appreciate this fact. I have no desire to impinge upon the rights of law-abiding citizens. I do not wish to trample upon the Second Amendment. The problem emerges when we choose to prioritize the convenience of these gun owners over the lives of innocent civilians. An argument I have heard frequently is that lives lost in mass shootings are statistically insignificant. Too few are killed, these people argue, to warrant action that may inconvenience many. There is nothing more appalling than normalizing the cruel, wasteful loss of human lives. In fact, thinking of human lives in the aggregate is inherently dehumanizing. Children are not produce to be stocked and accounted for. Children are not weights to be placed upon a scale. Children, above all, are not dollar bills to be counted, scrutinized, and evaluated. Children are human beings. Every child who has been murdered had hopes, dreams, and aspirations. They had every opportunity in the world. Some would succeed, some would fail, but they would all choose. They could choose to love, to achieve, to thrive. Is your right to choose an AR-15 worth taking away a child's right to live the life that they wish to live the life that they've dreamed of? For each and every person who believes that human lives are statistically insignificant, I want you to walk up to a mother, a father, a brother, a sister of one of the children who were murdered in Parkland. I want you to tell them that your cost-benefit analysis has determined that the life of their child is worth less than that of your own convenience. A question that has been floated around lately is, why is Parkland different? Why is this shooting sparking an action in a way no others have? Why do teenagers care, they seem to imply, when they have seemingly ignored every other tragedy? There are two answers to this. Firstly, we have always cared. Our minds, our souls have been hurt every time a death toll flashes across the television. Every time another sensible, seemingly non-controversial bill is voted down, we have writhed in frustration and disappointment. We simply never knew how to speak out. This time, however, our peers started the movement. There has never been a high school shooting of this magnitude in our political lifetimes. The students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High did not happen to merely fall victim to tragedy together. They have known and loved one another for years. There was a sense of community that their fellow victims in movie theaters and concerts could never match. The shooter attacked the wrong people. He attacked a family. We all see ourselves in the Parkland students, and they inspire us in a way we haven't felt before. Parkland also serves as a model for how we will pursue change. The hardest part of organizing is personnel, getting a group, establishing relationships, coming together. We are already there. We are all united right now, standing together. We are all friends, family. We share three common threads that are more powerful than anything they can throw at us. We come from the same place. We all care too much to let things carry on. And most importantly, we have gathered here today for a single, unitary reason. I don't just see a group of individuals in front of me. I see people who know, appreciate, and love one another. It is this feeling, these bonds, that we must build on to effect change, to stop deaths. Some may look cynically at our gathering today. It will never change anything, they will crow. They neglect one fact. We live in a democracy. Our voices matter, and our voices will be heard. We have one tool in our arsenal that billions of people around the world only wish they could have. A vote that means something. Speak out. Go to the polls. Check policy stances. Reach out to your elected officials. We, after all, are their bosses. Those of you who cannot vote, your time is coming. Millions of Americans who have never been able to vote will do so this fall. Legions more will cast ballots in 2019, 2020. I myself will be voting for the first time in my life on May 15th, 2 days after I turn 18. There is a wall of opposition against us, a wall of established apathy, of sickening priorities. We will break this wall. Our waves will crash against the dam. We will smash it, and our tide will liberate America from the scourge of gun violence that has afflicted us. Gun control is not a Democrat issue. It is not a liberal issue. it shouldn't even be an ideological issue. What we are dealing with is 17 dead bodies in Florida. What we are dealing with is a violation of human rights. What we are dealing with is an atrocity, and the people who value their convenience over preventing another one. There is no vital deterrent besides gun control. We absolutely need to educate people about mental health concerns and improve access to services for those who need help. School safety is important to all of us. Every root cause, anything that could save even one life, is worth examining. The only thing, however, that every shooting has in common is a gun. And as long as there is unfettered access to those guns specifically designed to take multiple human lives, the shootings will not stop. I will think of the victims. I will pray for the victims. But above all, I will honor the victims by doing anything and everything I can do to make sure something like what happened in Parkland never happens again. And let me tell you something else. Nobody expected us to go on this long. Every opponent, every single person who prioritizes convenience over human dignity expected us to give in, to accept this as part of human life. Here we are almost a month later, and we are only beginning. On Wednesday, Carlisle High School students will be walking out of class for gun control. Next Sunday, March 18th, we will be here again. Same time, same place, same cause. On March 24th, there will be a March for Our Lives in cities all across the country. Go to the march in Washington, D.C. Go to the march in Harrisburg. Go to any march in the country and make your voice heard. Our voices will be heard. We will not be silent. We have a power that nobody can take away from us. We care too much to be silent. We care too much to stay put. We know that history arcs our way and that we have the full might of justice behind us. If you still believe that Parkland is an outlier, you have that right. If you still believe 17 dead children and faculty are relatively inconsequential, you have that right. But if you believe that is enough, we will join together. Today, next week, the week after, and every day until sensible gun control is enacted. We will do all we can to make sure we will never see another Parkland. Never again! 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 Thank you!
Thanks everyone for being here. There are a couple of thank yous in order. A kind man named Harry set up this sound system for us. He did the same for a Unity rally we had last year. He's been great. He isn't here right now, but if you see him around taking down speakers, make sure to give him a big thank you. All the speakers we've had today, everyone who we've had speaking, give them a big round of applause, please. And most importantly, everyone who's in the audience today is helpful towards this cause. Do not forget to vote. We will see you next week.
It's my little bomb. I was upset because I saw you there. You saw me, and I set my phone on you, and I didn't know if you were like, "Are you here?" And if you're up I remember like this. That's why. I remember. I know.
Guys, I'm going to set up another tent over here on Anyone interested in getting information wants to support down there since 1960. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
It's really the kids. I mean,
I know, it's so awesome.
They have put hundreds of hours into this.
Debbie was saying, I said, well, are the kids going to get detention for walking out? And she said, no.
I'm also doing a kids later today. Okay, you're one of the I can say you're also but I have a new book out there. How she said how she's trying to push it to bring your story. Do you know that friend? Yeah, she it takes me to boyfriend do a lot of picture
How big she is! No, she's so big! Yeah, that's so, I know!
I don't know why they say to wait until I think you actually got energized. I was going to say, by the end of this speech, you really rose to such a great This was great. Good turnout. I got some really good pictures. Great. So it's going to have good media coverage.
Hey, look, it's all right, Matt Hawk. Hey, thanks for coming. That was a good speech.
Good to see you.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Derek, so much.
The man himself. I think I'm actually